Hi again, today we have a new mod for you, a mod known as Celista Synth. This is a mod that adds in celestial grade weapons, 3 new Minecraft weapons with many more being planned for the next many more updates. Like, this is a very fresh mod, a very new one, only created like at the start of the month, which is really awesome. The biggest thing with these weapons is these weapons are entirely different to your typical Minecraft weapons. Normally with your left click they will act exactly like you would expect a normal weapon to do. It just deals a normal amount of damage, but if you hold right click on any of these, they perform some really epic animations that varies depending on which weapon you've got. So what weapons do you have to choose from? Well, you've got the Solaris, the Crystallaria, and the Breeze Breaker. Let's go through them. Each sword has a lot of information to cover through, and if you ever need a reminder of what these swords do, all you need to do is hover over them whilst you're in your inventory. It will tell you not only the passives of these swords, but also the skills that come with them. If you hold shift when you're hovering over a sword, it will give you far more details to the passive and skills, and even tell you exactly how to activate each skill. First, we have the Solaris. This is a weapon that does 8 attack damage per hit and has a 1.5 attack speed, with its passive of Ember's Blessing. The player gains fire immunity whilst holding the item, as well as your normal attacks with this item will set the target on fire for a few seconds. Going through the skills of this sword, you have Spitting Flames full round and Spitting Flames a soul straight dash. Your full round ability is something that it only requires using the right click button. When you press this, you'll perform a graceful spin, inflicting damage and burning nearby entities. This move will also move you around the map, so let's say you're about 5 blocks in the air, this will shoot you in random circles and you will take fall damage if you do fall from a height, but it does a fair bit of damage and very useful against horde-like things. Your soul straight dash ability is activated when you right click whilst you're holding shift. This will dash you forward, striking and temporarily igniting entities in your path. This dash deals a lot of damage whenever you go through hordes of enemies. It's a great way to deal massive amounts of damage when you're dealing with massive hordes of enemies, and a very useful thing to do after you chain enemies for a little while. Also, if you do manage to go a full straight line with this ability without hitting any blocks to stop your current momentum, you can move upwards of 40 blocks in a few moments. It's very powerful, very useful utility ability, and a good way to potentially cross massive gaps as long as your end goal is lower than your starting goal. Pretty useful overall. Next is the Celestia Sword. This is a 9 attack damage sword with a 1.3 attack speed, and the passive is Heavy Hitter. The player gains a level of damage resistance while holding the item. Normal attacks with this item will also slow down the target for a few seconds. The skills of this sword is Lunar Celebration Barrage and Dragon Grisette Boom. Your Lunar Celebration Barrage is what happens when you right click. You unleash a dazzling barrage of strikes on nearby entities, accompanied by memorizing fireworks display. This is very similar to the right click ability of the Solaris, but rather than moving you around, you'll stay still in a current position, and it will deal a concentrated amount of damage in a circle around you, whilst also doing additional explosion damage from fireworks. Be careful though, if you do die in the middle of doing this animation, it will brick your game entirely, because whilst you're meant to die, it's going to finish off the animation, and you can't pause, you can't run any commands, you are literally bricked. That permanently bricks your world, so be very, very careful. I am reporting this to the mod creator immediately, so hopefully this gets fixed pretty quickly, but very big problem. Don't use these abilities when you're about to die. Your second skill with this sword, Dragon Grisette Boom, is activated when you right click whilst holding shift. You unleash a long range barrage of slashes cutting through any entity in its path. So this ability will travel in a line, dealing damage of anything that falls within this line animation until it hits a block or until it travels around 40 blocks. Once it hits a block in its way or it gets to 40 blocks, it will send a fireworks explosion as well as a normal explosion, dealing some damage to terrain as well as dealing damage to some mobs around it. A very useful ability if you want to deal with, it's not great for dealing with hordes that are close to you though, as it requires you to pretty much point directly at your feet, damaging yourself in the process with the explosives, and just not exactly the greatest thing, but very useful if you try and take some pot shots from a distance. Next we move into the Breeze Breaker weapon. This is a weapon that deals 6 attack damage per hit and has a 2 attack speed, so the slowest weapon as well as the least damaging weapon out of the lot, though it makes up in the fact that it's got 2 passives as well as 5 different skills that come with it. Your passives is Agile and Benevolent Soul. The passive Agile gives the player the huge jump boost and fall damage immunity whilst holding the item, but takes 2.3 times damage from all other damage sources, aka brutal as hell. Your Benevolent Soul ability is every 15 skill cast activated or deactivates this passive. While this passive is active, the player gains a speed boost and reduced skill cooldowns by half. The effect wears off after 8 seconds, so either the effect will disappear disappear after 15 uses of skills or after 8 seconds. You're more likely going to come across the 8 seconds, but you do get to spam out skills like a madman. The skills for this sword is Galestorm, Dual Galestorm, Full Force Whirlwind Extravagance, Roar of the Wind, and Zephyr's Death Wheel. Going through the Galestorm first, this is your right click ability. It unleashes a powerful wind slash that inflicts tremendous amount of damage upon impact. There's also the Dual Galestorm, which is the exact same thing, just you need to hold right click for more than 0.5 seconds, which will just make it so that this Galestorm ability will hit twice instead of once, dealing twice the amount of damage than before. Full Force Whirlwind Extravaganza is activated by right clicking whilst holding shift. It summons a destructive tornado that slices through any entities unfortunate enough to cross its path. This ability is an amazing crowd control ability, as every time you do hit an enemy with it whilst they also take damage, they'll also be flung back around 5 blocks. So if you use this in combination while continuously to moving backwards and move away from these mobs, you can use it to maintain a very good distance, which is very useful considering you take double damage whilst holding this sword. Roar of the Wind is activated when you right click while sprinting. This will swiftly dash you forward, inflicting massive amount of damage to the first entity it encounters along the way. When you use this ability, you'll dash roughly around 10 to 15 blocks. Now, a very big thing to keep in mind here is that your slashing bit that does damage will not appear until after you finish your initial dash. That means that any mobs in that like 10 to 15 block range that you dash through will not take any form of damage. It only will apply to any mobs ahead of you after you complete your dash. This does do a notable amount of damage, but if I'm completely honest, you're going to be trying to use this ability more for this massive amount of dash that you can get at instant speed while sprinting with this weapon. And Zephyr's Death Wheel, you can activate this ability when you right click whilst in midair. This creates a towering vertical wheel of wind around the player, obliterating nearby entities with its devastating force. Basically, when you're in midair, you'll swipe your sword downwards in a circle-esque effect and deal a hefty amount of damage to anything below you on the ground. Effectively speaking, if you do jump up and you just immediately hit it at the peak of your jump, it will hit anything that was on the same block that you were on at the same height that you were when you initially jumped. So the final major question you have is, how do you get access to these weapons in survival Minecraft? Well, I recommend having JEI installed for the crafting recipe, but you'll need to get across some very rare resources as well as a hefty amount of Netherite. Let's get started, eh? By far the easiest stuff to find are solar crystals inside of the Nether dimension. You can find these solar craters pretty commonly in the Nether dimension. They'll spawn in any biome, and these will have soul crystals in amongst them. In order to craft the Solaris, you need 4 of these soul crystals, 2 Netherite ingots, as well as an iron sword. You craft it in a sword-like fashion with the Solaris around the actual sword itself, and there you have it, a Solaris. Next is the Crescentia. This will require the use of lunar stones, which you can find in lunar craters, which generate in any cave levels, usually in the darker area of it where all your deep sleep will occur, and usually this will appear slightly underneath a cave. You can sometimes spot them out with the sea lanterns and the more bluish rock and lapis lazuli that will spawn surrounding it, and these are like huge pockets of water inside of these craters. You need to get 3 of these lunar stones, an iron sword, and 2 pieces of Netherite ingots, and craft it in a scythe-like fashion as shown on screen here to create the Crescentia. And the Breeze Breaker requires you to find Zephyr deposits. Now, the biggest thing that comes along with this one is this is by far the most difficult and rarest resource to come across when it comes to creating any of these weapons, as the spawning conditions for the Zephyr deposits are very, very rare in the first place, as it requires mountainous areas at above the Y level of 130, which is either very uncommon or extremely rare depending on the seed that you've chosen. And on top of that, not only are the spawn conditions very rare or uncommon in just normal Minecraft worlds, the likelihood of the deposit spawning in the first place is even rarer, which causes a bit of a problem that it makes it very, very difficult to ever come across this in a normal survival Minecraft world. I mean, I traveled around 8,000 blocks in several directions in several different instances, and as you can see in the footage here, we're way too high at the 130 range for a majority of the world, and mountains rarely come up to the right height. Even in amplified worlds, I've roamed around for a little bit in that one as well, and despite the terrain consistently being high enough to fit these conditions, I still didn't come across Zephyr deposits. So either it's not spawning and I'm on the latest version of the mod that is available for 1.19.4, or other means it's just way too rare of an item to find in the world. I would honestly make it a touch more common. Like, let's say every second mountainous biome you come across, there's most likely going to be a Zephyr deposit on there. I don't know. That one's a bit of a quirky on its own. This is by far the most expensive crafting recipe out of the lot, requiring 3 netherite ingots, 3 zephyr deposits, and an iron sword to craft this weapon. Overall though, it is by far the best weapon to have all round because it's just very useful for movement in general, but again, finding the deposits itself is very difficult, and there's no easy way to go about it. There's not even a location command to find if there's any in your world nearby anyway. Overall though, I absolutely love this mod. I just love the styling that comes along with the use of these weapons, and I really love how much it changes and strays away from typical Minecraft mod weapon shenanigans, and I absolutely love it. This mod could also fit pretty well with the Origins mod on the Forge version, and hopefully this comes to Fabric sometime in the future. Maybe, I don't know, it's up to the mod developer themselves. Either way, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like button down below and make sure to subscribe and click this amazing mod showcase on screen now. But until next time guys, bye bye!